The Birthmark is a short story by American author Nathaniel Hawthorne. The story portrays the young scientist Almer's obsession with human perfection. This obsession makes him want to erase his wife Georgina's birthmark, which is her only imperfection. But his experiments do not go as planned and it results in Georgina's death. So here in the story we have an example of imagery. The author says, "We must explain that in the center of Georgina's left cheek there was a mark, deep in her skin. The mark was usually a deep red color. When Georgina blushed, the mark became less visible, but when she turned pale, there was the mark, like a red stain upon snow. The mark would come and go with the emotions in her heart." Now, obviously, whenever you see them say usually a deep red color, when Georgina blushed, the mark became less visible. When she turned pale, there was a mark like a red stain upon snow. This shows that the author is trying to give us a vivid image of what the mark looks like. And with vivid details, the reader gets an image in their head of how the birthmark actually looks on Georgina and what it looks like. The point of view is clearly third person in the story, as you can see by this sentence example that we have. A long time ago, there lived a skillful scientist who had experienced a spiritual reaction more striking than any chemical one. Just by this one sentence, you can tell that the story is clearly in third person view.
The last literary technique we'll be discussing is characterization, and we can observe the author using this when he describes Almer as a brilliant yet misguided science, and the author also hints at the fact that his wife, Georgiana, is probably the only person who he loves as much as his scientific studies. In order to summarize this video, I'm going to go over the 3 key points that were talked about during our examination of this piece of literary work. So firstly, we talked about imagery, and we talked about how the author used imagery by inserting the quote that said, "We must explain that in the center of Georgiana's left cheek there was a mark, deep in her skin." Basically, the author just wanted to give us a visual image of what the birthmark on Georgiana's cheek looked like and what it represented. Secondly, in the video we talked about point of view, which we were able to conclude was third person. It was third person omniscient. We can conclude that this short story was third person because of the way the story started out, where it said, "A long time ago there lived a skillful scientist who had experienced a spiritual reaction more striking than any chemical one." Lastly, the last literary element we talked about was characterization. We were able to find the use of characterization used in this short story when the author starts to describe Aylmer and his wife Georgiana. He said in the text that Aylmer had so totally given himself to scientific studies that he could not be weakened by a second love, and that his love for his young wife could only be the stronger of the two if it could link itself with his love of science. By the author, by including this quote, we can tell that Aylmer had a strong passion for science, and that the author was even trying to give us a hint that he loved science more than his wife herself. And that concludes our video. Thank you so much for watching.